Uh, am I crazy for being? I don't know if there's been a regular season game I've more anticipated than this one here tonight, featuring Tiffany Hayes, someone I don't know. And look, I used to look in year one and year two. I look forward to the Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark battles, but this one here has taken precedent over that. Am I crazy for thinking, hey, this is one of the biggest regular season games for Caitlin Clark in her short 3-year WNBA career? John, I'll let you fire.
The locker room door slammed shut, and the air completely vanished from the room. Caitlin Clark stood there, staring at a piece of paper that changed everything in a heartbeat. Stephanie White was out. The resignation didn't just come out of nowhere. It felt like a tactical explosion designed to rock the Indiana Fever to their core. Nobody saw it coming, least of all the star player who has been carrying the entire league on her back. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of a season that just went from chaotic to catastrophic. This wasn't just a coaching change. It was a total abandonment of the vision that was supposed to save the franchise, and it left everyone wondering, who is really in control?
Show. Oh, this is must-see TV. I don't care what's going on. Caitlin Clark, box office, must-see television, and with all the hate and jealousy that is clearly permeating throughout this league for her, this has turned into not just a sport, but the best reality show in business. We got a bonehead coach. We got a dinglebat commissioner that has no idea what she's doing. We got a girl that can't even make layups, for Christ's sakes, that thinks she's just as good as Caitlin Clark. We got all of the haters trying to prop up anybody they can to.
Why would a coach walk away from the biggest star in the history of the game? The rumors are swirling that the friction between White's rigid system and Clark's explosive talent finally reached a breaking point. From day one, Stephanie White tried to complicate a situation that should have been incredibly simple. Instead of letting the greatest shooter we've ever seen run the show, she wanted to turn the offense into something unrecognizable. She wanted to make Aaliyah Boston the hub and have the ball go through the point center. It was a clash of egos that eventually led to this final, shocking resignation letter hitting the desk while the team was already reeling from internal pressure.
Sakes that thinks she's just as good as Caitlin Clark. We got all of the haters trying to prop up anybody they can to become a rival, a legitimate competitor, even if it means your one shining moment from a player named Tiffany Hayes that averages 5.5 points a game. This is the best reality show in sports, period. You are not crazy for that. I can't wait for the Clark show tonight.
And so, with that being said, I want to turn a bit more serious. Not that I wasn't serious about that, but I have reached the conclusion when Caitlin Clark.
The truth is that the Indiana Fever organization has been playing a dangerous game with their superstar. Insiders are pointing to a bizarre philosophy where the front office wants the franchise to be like Apple. They want the brand to be bigger than any individual player, even if that player is Caitlin Clark. This move to suppress Clark's influence and prioritize the corporate identity over the generational talent has created a toxic environment. When you try to dim the lights on a player who is bringing in millions of fans, you create a rift that no amount of PR can fix. Stephanie White's departure is the first major casualty of this failed organizational experiment that prioritized ego over winning.
With that being said, I want to turn a bit more serious. Not that I wasn't serious about that, but I have reached the conclusion when Caitlin Clark came out and said, hey, look, I got a little mental issue as it relates to these injuries. I got some hangover from last year and getting beat up and hey, it gets in my head. And that's why she said that she maybe out of being way too cautious, missed that game last week. And that to me is an indicator that, like, hey, and I say this affectionately, I mean, like, Caitlin Clark is a little crazy.
Caitlin Clark recently admitted she's been dealing with some serious mental hurdles. She spoke openly about the anxiety and the mental hangover from getting beat up night after night on the court. It turns out that the physical abuse from opponents was only half the battle. The real struggle was happening inside her own building. Imagine being the face of a league, carrying the financial weight of every other player's paycheck, and then realizing your own coach doesn't have your back. That kind of betrayal leads to the exact kind of mental fatigue Clark described. It makes the job nearly impossible when the person leading you is secretly trying to move you out of the spotlight.
Last week. And that to me is an indicator that, like, hey, and I say this affectionately, I mean, like, Caitlin Clark is a little crazy. She is probably on the spectrum a little bit. When you watch her play, she has a hard time controlling her emotions. And I'm not saying this to be hypercritical. I'm just saying it's the reality. Women suffer from anxiety issues. And why wouldn't you have a bunch of anxiety when you're carrying a league financially, doing everything in your power to grow the league and to make it possible for all the other players to make an abundance of money, and then they hate you. They turn around and hate you.
The drama with Tiffany Hayes was just the tip of the iceberg. While the media was focused on the on-court rivalry and the online bickering, the real war was happening in the film room. Coaches were reportedly propping up players who averaged 5 points a game while treating Clark like just another body on the roster. This jealousy hasn't just been coming from other teams, it has been permeating through the Fever's own coaching staff. When a coach allows that kind of resentment to fester, they lose the locker room. Stephanie White's resignation is being seen by many as a white flag, an admission that she couldn't handle the heat that comes with managing a true icon.
Carrying a league financially, doing everything in your power to grow the league and to make it possible for all the other players to make an abundance of money, and then they hate you. They turn around and hate you, abuse you physically. And so it made me, when I heard Caitlin Clark say, like, man, as it relates to these injuries, I got a little mental problem, it made me sympathetic towards Stephanie White and the Fever organization. I think Caitlin Clark is, and not in a super negative way, but there's some difficulty with coaching her because she's under a lot of pressure. She's got anxiety issues.
Critics are calling this the best reality show in sports, but for Caitlin Clark, it's a nightmare. We've got a coaching staff that seemed determined to prove they didn't need Clark to succeed. They were choosing to put other players in front of promotions while the fans were screaming for number 22. It's an insanity that defies logic. You have a gold mine in your backyard, and you're complaining about the dirt. The lack of sympathy for Stephanie White from those close to the situation is telling. They believe she was given a blessing and treated it like a burden, and now she's walking away before she can be held accountable for the mounting tension.
Stephanie White, absolutely not. No chance. Doesn't make me more sympathetic toward the Indiana Fever organization. We've watched this organization and this coach complicate this thing much more than it needed to be complicated. We've watched Stephanie White come in here and take an offense that was flowing and want to change it and make Leah Boston a hub and play her at point center. And, Kelsey Mitchell's the number one priority. All of these things, this was an easy gig. You show up, you let Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston handle the offense, you handle the defense. This was an easy job. You got the Indiana Fever, you got the biggest star ever. You are...
The mental illness narrative that has been floating around is a dark twist in this saga. Some analysts are suggesting that the organization itself is responsible for the psychological toll on Clark. They created an environment where she felt isolated and unsupported. When you have a player who is a little nutty in the same way Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant were, you don't try to fix them, you build around them. Instead, the Fever tried to mold Clark into something she isn't. The resignation is proof that the pressure of that mistake became too much to bear. White realized she couldn't win the power struggle against the reality of Clark's massive stardom.
And everybody, they wanted the Indiana Fever to become Apple, which means they want this. They don't like Caitlin Clark being bigger than the franchise. They don't like Caitlin Clark being bigger than the league, when the fact of the matter is it's just the truth. So they're going to do everything they can to try to lift everyone over her because the Indiana Fever want to be Apple. So I don't sympathize with Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever organization. They got a blessing and they need to handle it as such.
John?
Once again, Jason, I can't have any sympathy for him, man, because a lot.
Just days before the resignation news broke, Stephanie White finally went on the record saying Caitlin Clark was the first option. It felt like a desperate attempt at damage control, but the players knew the truth. You don't go an entire season trying to make Kelsey Mitchell the priority and then flip the script overnight. That kind of inconsistency destroys trust. Clark has been playing through injuries and emotional exhaustion only to find out the leadership was changing their tune just to save their jobs. It was too little, too late. The resignation notice was already being drafted because the bridge had been burned beyond any hope of repair. The role of the commissioner and the league office can't be ignored here either. They've been described as having no idea what they're doing while the league's biggest asset is being physically and mentally targeted. The dingbat management style has left stars like Clark vulnerable. When the league doesn't protect its stars and the team doesn't support them, a resignation is the only logical conclusion. Stephanie White may have seen the writing on the wall. The chaos at the top of the WNBA is filtering down into the individual teams, creating a vacuum where no one feels safe or stable. This is a league in transition, and the casualties are starting to pile up. What happens to the Indiana Fever offense now? The attempt to turn Aaliyah Boston into a point center was failing spectacularly, and it was frustrating everyone on the floor. The flow was gone, and the excitement that Clark brings to the game was being stifled by a coach who wanted to play old-school basketball in a new school era. The resignation might actually be the best thing for Clark's career in the long run. It opens the door for a coach who actually understands the modern game and knows how to utilize a generational talent. But in the short term, the shock of this move has left the entire roster in a state of absolute confusion and total disarray. The physical toll on Clark has been documented in every game. She's getting hit, shoved, and targeted by players like Tiffany Hayes who seem to have a personal vendetta. But the mental toll of having her own organization participate in that marginalization is what really hurts. Sources say the resignation letter specifically cited the difficulty of coaching in this new environment. It's a polite way of saying she couldn't handle the scrutiny. When every decision you make is questioned by millions of fans, you either rise to the occasion or you quit. Stephanie White chose to quit, leaving Caitlin Clark to pick up the pieces of a fractured season once again. There is a sense of betrayal that is hard to ignore. Clark came into this league with the weight of the world on her shoulders. She expected her team to be her sanctuary, but it turned into another battlefield. The front office's obsession with being Apple meant they didn't want any one person to be the face of the franchise. They wanted a system of replaceable parts, but you can't replace Caitlin Clark. The resignation of the head coach is a massive win for the fans who wanted to see the Clark show unleashed, but it's a terrifying moment for a player who just wanted some stability and a coach she could finally trust. The timing of this resignation is particularly suspicious. It comes right as the league is hitting its peak viewership, and the pressure is at an all-time high. Is it possible that the mental issues Clark mentioned were actually a warning sign to the coaching staff? If the star player is unhappy and vocal about the internal friction, the coach is always the first one to go. Stephanie White might have decided to jump before she was pushed. The resignation notice wasn't just a career move. It was a survival tactic in a league that is becoming increasingly cutthroat as the stakes and the money continue to climb higher. Jason Whitlock and other commentators have pointed out that the greats are always a little bit insane. They have a drive that most people can't understand, but that drive requires a certain level of support from the coaching staff. If you treat a thoroughbred like a workhorse, they're going to push back. The Fever tried to domesticate Clark's game, and it resulted in a total collapse of the coaching structure. This resignation is a clear signal that the old way of doing things in the WNBA is officially dead. You can no longer ignore the power of the individual superstar in favor of a stagnant, outdated team-first philosophy. The reaction from the rest of the league has been one of pure shock. Other coaches are looking at Indiana and seeing a cautionary tale. If you can't make it work with the most popular player in the world, what hope do you have? The resignation has sent shockwaves through the front offices of every team. It's a reminder that the Caitlin Clark effect isn't just about ticket sales and TV ratings. It's about a fundamental shift in how teams are managed. The pressure is real, the hate is real, and the jealousy is real. If you aren't prepared to handle all of it, you don't belong on the sidelines in this new era. Caitlin's own words about her mental issues take on a new meaning in light of this resignation. She wasn't just talking about the stress of the game. She was talking about the stress of the environment. Being the first option shouldn't be a debate, it should be a given. When the coach finally admitted it, it was a hollow victory because the actions on the court never matched the words in the press conferences. The resignation notice is the ultimate admission that the coaching staff failed to create an environment where their best player could thrive both physically and mentally. It's a tragic end to a partnership that had so much potential. The Golden State matchup was supposed to be a turning point, a chance for the Fever to show they were a cohesive unit. Instead, it became the backdrop for the final breakdown of the coaching staff. The Valkyries and other teams have been watching this internal struggle with interest, waiting for the moment the Fever would implode. That moment has arrived. The resignation is a gift to the rest of the league as it leaves the Fever leaderless and vulnerable at a critical juncture. For Clark, it's another obstacle in a career that has already been defined by overcoming the impossible against all odds. Is Caitlin Clark really on the spectrum of greatness, or is she just a victim of a league that doesn't know how to handle her? The anxiety she feels is a rational response to an irrational situation. She is being asked to save a league while her own coach is resigning mid-season. The resignation notice is a symbol of the instability that has defined her professional career so far. It's hard to stay focused on shooting threes when the floor beneath you is constantly shifting. The shock she felt when she heard the news was likely mixed with a sense of relief that the drama with White was finally over. The Dinglebat leadership mentioned in the transcripts isn't just a funny insult. It's a terrifying reality for the players. When the people in charge don't have a clear vision, the players suffer. Stephanie White's resignation is the ultimate proof of a lack of vision. She couldn't figure out how to bridge the gap between the old WNBA and the new reality. She was stuck in the middle, and she paid the price with her job. The resignation notice is a warning to the next coach. If you don't put Caitlin Clark first, you won't last long in this city or this league. The rules have changed. The financial boom of the league is the only thing keeping the lights on during this controversy, but money can't buy chemistry, and it can't buy a good relationship between a coach and a player. The resignation is a reminder that even with record-breaking crowds and massive TV deals, the game is still won or lost in the locker room. If the heart of the team is broken, the business will eventually follow. The Fever are at a crossroads. They can either find a coach who embraces the Clark show, or they can continue to struggle with their identity while their superstar player looks for the exit. The physical abuse Clark takes on the court is something we've never seen before. Players are literally throwing their bodies at her to stop her from scoring, but it's the lack of protection from the officials and her own coaching staff that makes it truly egregious. Stephanie White's failure to stand up for her player might be the real reason she had to resign. You can't lead a team if the players don't believe you'll fight for them. The resignation notice is the final act of a coach who was more interested in the system than the people playing in it, and that's a recipe for disaster. What comes next for Caitlin Clark? She's currently in shock, but she's also a fighter. She's dealt with haters, jealousy, and bonehead coaches her entire life. This resignation is just another chapter in her story of resilience. The league wants to see her fail because she's bigger than the game, but every time they knock her down, she comes back stronger. The resignation of Stephanie White is a massive moment in WNBA history, but it won't be the thing that defines Clark's career. She is the one who will decide the future of this league, with or without a coach who believes in her. The final lesson here is that you can't ignore greatness. You can't try to hide it, suppress it, or manage it into something ordinary. The Indiana Fever tried to do that with Caitlin Clark, and they lost their head coach because of it. The resignation is a powerful insight into the cost of ego in professional sports. If you aren't willing to build around your best assets, you'll eventually find yourself out of a job. The WNBA is changing, and the people who can't adapt are being left behind.